Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're investigating the massive and, honestly, often invisible backbone of our medical system, healthcare distributors. These are the companies handling the medications and devices that literally keep us alive. But what happens when things go wrong? Well, we're going to see exactly how the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, or SASB for short, forces these corporations to quantify their ethical and safety failures in cold hard cash.
So think about this for a second. When a company fails ethically or endangers public safety, how do we look past the carefully crafted PR spin to measure true corporate accountability? For a really long time, it was incredibly difficult to compare the severity of different corporate failures. A press release apologizing for a mistake doesn't really tell investors or the public the true scale of the damage, right? We absolutely need a standardized way to measure these failures. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with tracking corporate accountability, move into defining total monetary losses, then reporting product safety failures, and tracking business ethics violations, before wrapping up with context and corrective actions.
Section 1. Tracking corporate accountability. Healthcare distributors act as a vital bridge in the supply chain, which means they face some pretty intense scrutiny. To track their accountability, sustainability standards mandate a highly specific set of accounting codes, like the ones laid out on this matrix. Instead of vague promises, companies have to report against specific industry topics, spanning from fleet fuel management all the way to product lifecycle. But today, we're hyper-focusing on two of the most critical disclosure topics on this list.
Section 2. Defining total monetary losses. Okay, before we break down the specific violations, we really need to understand the single powerful metric used to measure them, which is total monetary losses. The standard forces companies to report the actual bottom-line financial penalties they suffer due to legal and regulatory proceedings. This ensures that failures are measured in a quantifiable currency. It doesn't matter if the loss is the result of a settlement, a verdict after a really long trial, or a regulatory fine. If the company has to pay out a liability to an opposing party, it gets tallied up right here. The crucial point here is that this metric casts an incredibly wide net. It captures liabilities brought by governments, competing businesses, or private individuals. If a distributor is hit with a civil action resulting in a massive settlement, it's included. If a regulator steps in and demands disgorgement, which is just a fancy legal term for forcing a company to give up illegally obtained profits, that's included too. And if the absolute worst happens, and criminal actions lead to judgments or mandatory restitution, those millions of dollars are tracked using this exact same metric. Now, here's a really fascinating detail. There is a very specific accounting exclusion mandated by this standard. Companies are not allowed to bundle in their own lawyer fees or defense expenses. Why does that matter? Because the reported number has to be purely the penalties and settlements paid out for the misconduct itself. Think about it. If a company spends $50 million on high-powered defense attorneys just to fight a $10 million fine, they only report the $10 million. This keeps the metric laser-focused on the actual damage and the penalty, not just the massive budget of the corporate legal department. Section 3. Reporting product safety failures. That brings us to Accounting Code HC-DI-250A.1, which deals directly with product safety. Even though distributors don't actually formulate or manufacture the drugs themselves, the standard clearly states they share the burden for consumer safety. They face massive liabilities over things like distributing controlled substances with high abuse potential, handling mislabeled products, or failing to address chemical toxicity. If a distributor fails to ensure proper dosage dispensing or sells products containing substances of very high concern, and they get sued or fined for it, every single dollar of that penalty must be publicly disclosed under this code. Section 4. Tracking business ethics violations. Here, we pivot over to Accounting Code HC-DI-510A.2, which applies this exact same financial scrutiny to business ethics. Healthcare distributors are subject to strict jurisdictional laws all around the globe, and when they break those laws, they have to publicly report the monetary losses they suffer if they're caught engaging in bribery, corruption, false marketing claims, or illegal business intelligence gathering. Whether it's an inappropriate interaction with a government official to secure a lucrative contract or a fraudulent marketing scheme, the resulting fines and civil judgments are tracked right here.
By placing these two disclosure topics side by side, we can really see the brilliance of this accounting framework. The standard essentially forces corporations to translate two vastly different failures, the physical danger of a toxic or mislabeled drug on one hand, and the moral bankruptcy of corporate bribery on the other, into one universal language: financial loss. Investors and the public don't have to become experts in pharmaceutical toxicity or international anti-corruption law to understand the true scale of a company's failures. They just have to look at the total monetary losses reported under these two specific codes.
Section 5. Context and corrective actions. But let's be honest, financial numbers alone just aren't enough. A massive fine for one company could just be a slap on the wrist for another. That's exactly why the standard includes critical notes dictating 3 specific steps for context. First, companies have to publicly confess the nature of the loss. Was it a simple settlement, a deferred prosecution agreement, or an outright guilty plea? Second, they have to describe the context. Was this fine for outright fraud or a failure regarding safety warning labels? And third, and this is absolutely crucial, they must outline the specific corrective actions they've taken. They literally have to tell the public exactly how they have changed their operations, their management structure, their employee training, or their technology to guarantee this failure never, ever happens again. So as we wrap up this explainer, looking at how standards like SASB force transparency, it leaves us with a pretty vital question to ponder. When we see a distributor report millions of dollars in total monetary losses for safety or ethics violations, followed by a neat little list of newly implemented training programs and technologies, does tracking these penalties actually prevent future harm? Or, in the highly lucrative world of healthcare distribution, are these massive fines simply an accepted line item on a corporate balance sheet? Well, by understanding these accounting codes, you now have the tools to look at a company's financial disclosures and decide that for yourself.